Good afternoon, and I'm a little late today. I do apologize. There's some things to catch up on, but here we are, almost on the stroke of 2, and we'll give it a couple of minutes for people to say hello and join us. Hello, James. Always there. Very reliable. Hello, Marlene. I don't want your pound of flesh. But any other donations are always accepted. Hello, Margaret. Welcome from Brookline. It's a very warm day here again in Pittsburgh. Clouds passing over, not improving the situation. Hello, Shelley. Wherever you are in the world, tuning in, listening in, or tuning in later. Hello, Grace in Dublin. I hope it's not as sticky where you are as it is here. Hello, David. Very warm and sunny evening in the UK. I bet it's a lot warmer here. But I'm delighted that it's sunny for you. As I've said before, Stratford is one of the loveliest places when the sun shines. Hello, Barry and Mary Lou. So yes, today we're doing Merchant of Venice, part the 3rd, on Where Does Justice Lie? And as I mentioned last time, I think I'm extending it to a part 4 next week because I think there's just too much to cover in 3 programs. And the week after that, we will be returning to our occasional series on the 7 basic plots, but more about that later. Hello, Robert. Quite a change from Fort Lauderdale. Yes, I would say it is. And there's Ken. Yes, you're right. It did start nice. I was up early this morning. It was gorgeous. And now it's just dankly moist, which I never really like. Helena, hi. Hi to you. Hello, Dennis in Greensburg. Another regular and reliable, as is James in Crafton. Welcome to you. It's nice to see all the regulars up there. I discover we have an awful lot of regulars who don't watch live, but actually watch later in the evening, which means that they probably got gainful employment to engage with, rather than just listening to me rambling on about theatre. But there is a really large regular audience out there, and one of the reasons is because people like you have mentioned it to their friends and said, go and look on the YouTube channel. And people are subscribing to the YouTube channel, which is really important to us. So if you haven't already, hello, Fitzjamie. If you haven't, Ann Pat from Oakland, hello. If you haven't already subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do so. But most important, please tell your friends to do so, because we want to spread the wings a little wider if we possibly can. And the more people who subscribe to the channel, the more impressive the channel becomes. And that's really important to us. So from the bottom of my heart, tell your friends. So how are we doing? Yes, we'll make a start. Now, part 3 on Where Does Justice Lie? Now, some of you may think I'm taking a somewhat jaundiced view of this play, and my answer to that is you're right, because I think the play in itself is somewhat jaundiced. And of course, this is, hello, Helen, welcome back. This view of mine is prejudiced, but then that's the view that everyone must take whenever they read any play. What is your feeling about it? How does it strike you? Where does it move you? And to me, this play has always moved me, I suppose, in the direction that it is about prejudice. Now, one could argue that it was about other things because they're mentioned in the play. And on a cursory reading, you could say the play is about justice. The play is about mercy. I would argue that that is Shakespeare with his tongue placed very firmly in his cheek. My feeling on reading the play, on performing in the play, on directing the play, my feeling is that Shakespeare was not so simplistic and was playing, if you like, to 2 sides of an audience. the side of the audience, the groundlings, the ones who in Elizabethan England would have accepted the play as being just and accepted that notion, which I think I mentioned last week, that the judgment on Shylock, or that he become a Christian, was actually a merciful judgment, because by becoming a Christian, he will be allowed to go to heaven. But he could also have been writing for the other part of the audience, what we might describe as the more intellectual side of the audience, the more educated side of the audience, who might have looked at it and seen the levels of social and legal injustice that were prevalent in just about any court in England in the Elizabethan Jacobean period, late Tudor going into the Jacobean period. So with all of those thoughts in mind, we're going to take a look at the other principal protagonist in the play. We have already met the merchant and his particular friend. We have met with the moneylender or banker. Now we've got to meet with both the cause and purpose of the loan that Bassanio needs, and for which his friend Antonio is willing to bind himself to what the banker describes as a merry bond. And this person, this cause and purpose, is Portia. A lady richly left is the first way that Bassanio describes her. Not the woman I love, not the most gorgeous human being on the planet, not Mother Teresa, not any of those things. A lady richly left, his first observation about her. She is an heiress, if you will. And she's quite a catch, obviously, because there are suitors coming from far and wide, all over the known world, to win her, or at least to gamble on getting her money. Because that, to a large extent, is what it's about. She is fabulously rich. And if you think about the fabulously rich heiresses over the last, say, 100, 150 years, all of them tended to marry people who wanted their money, or avoiding marrying people because they would know it was their money they were after. But these guys are coming to gamble on the fact that they can get her money, and her, into the bargain. But because of the terms of her father's will, they only get her and all that comes with her if they pick the right box, or casket, if you will. Let's be honest about it. A casket is just a box. The whole thing is set up, as I think I mentioned last week, like a TV quiz game. You take the gamble, you open the box, and if she's inside the box, you win. And if you fail, you must leave immediately and swear that you will never seek a woman by way of marriage for the rest of your lives. I note it is by way of marriage, so it doesn't preclude any naughtiness, but it simply says you can't marry anybody else. In other words, in a funny way, it's saying, if you don't win this one, you can't marry anyone else for money either. That's the gamble for the rest of their lives. Now, at the start of this process, we already hear that several of the suitors have withdrawn their candidacy once they heard that particular condition. So clearly, her wealth and beauty isn't always an attraction, given the price of failure. It might be better to go away and marry some other rich woman where you don't have that condition attached. So already we see that the winnowing of suitors by the father's will is beginning to work out. He only wants that his daughter and her money and her property to go to somebody who's willing to work for it and take a risk, or to use the more accurate term for the word risk, a gamble. So, what is she like, this paragon of virtue, this exponent of the grace of mercy, and whose belief in the concept of mercy is so famously expounded in possibly the play's most famous speech? in just one speech, and only one speech. But we'll come to that next week. Her views of mercy are interesting. So what kind of a woman is Portia? Well, it's not some innocent beauty trapped in a tower waiting for a prince to come and rescue her. This is not Rapunzel. This is an articulate, intelligent, self-opinionated, and very independent woman. And a woman who very clearly resents the conditions that are very clearly written in her father's will. She doesn't like it, but she's trapped in it. And a woman trapped in a set of circumstances is always a dangerous thing. And her resentment of this trap and of this situation she's been placed in becomes very clear from her reaction to the various suitors. Reactions that are not exactly gracious, indeed, not exactly merciful. It's her maid Nerissa who, in a sort of a question and answer session that is quite fun, but it is Nerissa who identifies them. First, there is the Neapolitan prince. Let's hear her reaction to that.
Aye, that's a colt indeed, for he doth nothing but talk of his horse, and he makes it a great appropriation to his own good parts that he can shoe him himself. I am much afeard my lady his mother played false with a smith.
It's funny, yeah, it is funny. Portia is always witty, although you might describe that as somewhat ungenerous, particularly to his mother. Then next there is the County Palatine. Let's hear that.
He doth nothing but frown, as who should say, and you will not have me, choose. He hears merry tales and smiles not. I fear he will prove the weeping philosopher when he grows old, being so full of unmannerly sadness in his youth. I'd rather be married to a death's head with a bone in his mouth than to either of these. God defend me from these two.
Probably a fair reaction. He does sound like a bit of a bore, but one might equally say she is a little merciless in her opinion. But what does she think of the French lord, Monsieur Le Bon?
God made him, therefore let him pass for a man. In truth, I know it is a sin to be a mocker, but why, he hath a horse better than the Neapolitans, a better bad habit of frowning than the Count Palatine. He is every man in no man. If a throstle sing, he falls straight a capering. He will fence with his own shadow. If I should marry him, I should marry 20 husbands. If he would despise me, I would forgive him, for if he love me to madness, I will not requite him.
Slightly firm in her opinion there too. And the English are not neglected in this barrage of distaste. And here's Shakespeare very firmly has a tongue in his cheek. So what says she to Falconbridge, the young Baron of England?
Well, you know I say nothing to him, for he understands not me, nor I him. He hath neither Latin, French, nor Italian, and you will come into the court and swear that I have a poor pennyworth in the English. He is a proper man's picture, but alas, who can converse with a dumb show? How oddly he is suited. I think he bought his doublet in Italy, his round hose in France, his bonnet in Germany, and his behavior everywhere.
To be fair, Shakespeare is probably using Portia's mouth to describe how could I put it, the lack of internationalism and fashion sense that the English seem to possess. And after 400 years, nothing seems much to have changed. This is a description of the European reaction to the English in the time of, as I say, the late Tudor, early Jacobean period. And I don't think that the Europeans thought that much of the English sense of dress or their ability to learn foreign languages or even their cooking. But to move on. As for the young German, Duke of Saxony's nephew,
very vilely in the morning when he is sober, and most vilely in the afternoon when he is drunk. When he is best, he is A little worse than a man, and when he is worst, he is little better than a beast. And the worst fall that ever fell, I hope I shall make shift to go without him. Therefore, for fear the worst, I pray thee, set a deep glass of Rhenish wine on the contrary casket. For if the devil be within and that temptation without, I know he will choose it. I will do anything, Nerissa, ere I will be married to a sponge.
I love this because, as I say, again, it's Shakespeare using Portia's mouth to, I suppose, in a way, condemn the various other nationalities which tended to, even then, bring themselves to London as a centre of trade and commerce. London seems to always have attracted foreigners on that level, even though the English seem to be doing their best to throw them out at the moment. But nonetheless, Shakespeare did love to have a go at just about everybody, and he uses Portia's mouth to do it. But back to the play itself, and Portia is definitely, while the badinage is undoubtedly witty, it's displaying what one might basically call a fair degree of, well, dare I say, prejudice. And we see this best when we actually meet with a suitor, those who have agreed not to leave it, but to actually take the test, to do the trial by boxes. And the first one to arrive in our presence is the Prince of Morocco, a man who is clearly very proud of his race. Listen to what he says.
Mislike me not for my complexion, the shadowed livery of the burnished sun, to whom I am a neighbor and near bred. Bring me the fairest creature northward born, where Phoebus' fire scarce thaws the icicles, and let us make incision for your love to prove whose blood is reddest, his or mine. I tell thee, lady, this aspect of mine hath feared the valiant. By my love, I swear the best regarded virgins of our clime have loved it too. I will not change this hue, except to steal your thoughts, gentle queen.
One interesting thing in that small, relatively short introductory speech is that Morocco says, compare me with any person further north, in other words, white, and make incision for your love to prove whose blood is reddest, his or mine. He's almost using an identical image that Shylock has used, if you prick us, do we not bleed? In other words, we all have blood in us. Morocco, in a way, Shakespeare's taking that thought on a step further and saying, if you cut us both, black and white, Jew, Gentile, whatever, it's the same color blood. It's a very important oft-missed point. But again, what Shakespeare is giving us quite subtly is this clear picture that we're all the same, under the skin, behind the religion, behind the politics, behind everything else, we are all alike. And he does this in little subtle ways right the way through this play and in quite a few other plays as well. Anyway, Morocco is in fact the first who introduces us to this particular game of chance, this game of boxes or caskets. He is the first to lay out to us, let us see what are the options. Listen to this.
The first of gold, who this inscription bears, who chooseth me shall gain what many men desire. The second, silver, which this promise carries, who chooseth me shall get as much as he deserves. This third, dull lead, with warning all is blunt, who chooseth me must give and hazard all he hath. How shall I know if I do choose the right?
That's a good question. So, what are the boxes telling us? Gold says you get what many men desire. Silver says you get what you deserve. And the third says you've got to give, place your bet, and gamble. Now, the temptation, of course, for the moderate person is not to gamble. Everyone has a better belief in their own deserts than is probably true. And what many men desire may not, it's the old adage of don't do unto others what they do unto you, their taste may be different. What many men desire may not be what you desire. So there is an enigma within the clues on the 3 caskets. I'm obsessed with this notion. It's just like a TV game show. And I'm sure if Shakespeare were writing it in a later time, in the time of television, he would have called it the game of boxes. But anyway, it is explained to them, all the suitors, that the image of Portia will be found inside the correct casket. And the winner of that takes all. You see, it's just like a TV game. Winner takes all. The winner takes it all. It's like a song, isn't it? You get the house, you get the money, and of course, the main prize, you get Portia. Although for many of them, I think you were getting the house, Portia, and the main prize, all the money. Morocco thinks that Portia is the golden prize. And he is golden in his praise of her. And let it be said of himself, that pride, that opinion of golden wonderment is also about himself. So he chooses gold, wrongly. And what does he say?
Oh, hell, what have we here? A carrion death, within whose empty eye there is a written scroll. I'll read the writing. All that glisters is not gold. Often have you heard that told. Many a man his life hath sold, but my outside to behold. Gilded tombs do worms enfold. Had you been as wise as bold, young in limbs, in judgment old, your answer had not been inscrolled. Fare you well, your suit is cold. Cold indeed, and labor lost. Then farewell heat and welcome frost. Portia, adieu. I have too grieved the heart to take a tedious leave, thus loses heart.
Well, that was sad. Many men desire the golden prize, but the golden prize always hides something. And the one thing that is always hidden behind, all that glisters is not gold. It may be shiny, it may be pretty, but behind it there is always a price to pay, and the price to pay is death. Because no matter what you, when you may be buried in a golden casket, but you're dead inside of it. You may wish for gold, but the price you pay for it it's the Midas touch. So gold clearly was not a good bet. And with some justification, Portia is delighted with this result. Morocco is an overly proud man, a self-opinionated man, maybe something of a bore. But that's not the particular reason she cites for her delight in his failure. Her reason, to say the least, is somewhat prejudiced in another direction.
A gentle riddance. Draw the curtains. Go. Let all of his complexion choose me so.
Clearly, there was a fourth color at play here. That is a deeply prejudicial statement. No matter what way you look at it, let all of his complexion choose me so. There is a prejudice, an underlying, in fact, it's not even underlying, it's fairly blatant, prejudice in Portia against Morocco, and based on his color. Yes, indeed. Yes, thank you, America's Theatre. Very much like that, very much, and probably not outside the realms of reality, because Shakespeare was well read, did know his history, did know his European history. He may not have known that Illyria didn't have a coastline, but he was very, very aware of that. And the Catherine de' Medici story is very, very similar in that sense. But as I've often said, Shakespeare never had an original, well, he had original thoughts, but he never bothered with original plots when he could steal one from somewhere else. Sorry, research one from somewhere else. Don't call it plagiarism, call it research. But that is a very good point. So anyway, next along comes Aragon, and his name gives him away. A man of much self-opinion, a man of much self-regard. But then again, he is Spanish. Let's hear what he has to say.
And so have I addressed me. Fortune, now, to my heart's hope. Gold, silver, and base lead. Who chooseth me must give and hazard all he hath. You shall look fairer ere I give and hazard. What says the golden chest? Ha! Let me see. Who chooseth me shall gain what many men desire. What many men desire. Ah, that many may be meant by the full multitude that choose by show, not learning more than the fond eye doth teach, which prizes not to the interior, but, like the martlet, builds in the weather on the outward wall, even in the force and road of casualty. I will not choose what many men desire, because I will not jump with the common spirits and rank me with the barbarous multitudes. Why then to thee, thou silver treasure house, tell me once more what title thou dost bear. Who chooseth me shall get as much as he deserves. And well said too, for who shall go about to cousin Fortune and be honorable without the stamp of merit? Let none presume to wear an undeserved dignity. Who chooseth me shall get as much as he deserves. I will assume desert. Give me the key for this. And instantly unlock my fortunes here. What's here? The portrait of a blinking idiot presenting me a schedule. I will read it. How unlike art thou to my Portia? The fire 7 times tried this, 7 times tried that judgment is that did never choose amiss. Some there be that shadows kiss, such have but a shadow's bliss. There be fools alive, iwis, silvered ore, and so was this. Take what wife you will to bed, I will ever be your head. So be gone, you are sped. Still more fool I shall appear by the time I linger here. With one fool's head I came to woo, now I go away with 2. Sweet, adieu, I'll keep my oath, patiently to bear my wrath.
Aragon's arrogance proves him to be a fool. And it is that sense of self that defeats him, which very often defeats us all. There's a kind of small moral sermon in this as well. Because I will not jump with common spirits and rank me with the barbarous multitudes, I will not choose what many men desire. I am better than many men. I am special. So he goes for the casket that says, "Who chooseth me shall get as much as he deserves." And who shall go about to cousin Fortune and be honorable without the stamp of merit? I am a deserver. I am a deserver because I am special. And because I am special, I deserve the prize. But what he doesn't recognize, and it's there in the thing he takes out. Some there be that shadows kiss, such have but a shadow's bliss. There be fools alive a wis, silvered o'er, and so was this. And this is the point. Silver was used, and indeed is still used, to cover a lesser thing. A silver-plated, and we all know, silver-plated dish, silver-plated cup, silver is used for covering, and it was as much in Shakespeare's time as it is in the present day. And the recognition that that which looks good, just as with the gold, all that glisters is not gold, and all that glistens is not necessarily silver either. So there's a kind of a moral lesson within this, and only a fool would think otherwise. And Aragon's arrogance proves him to be a fool. And the fool's head or picture is what he wins. Foolishness will not win the fair lady or the money. One would need to be a lot smarter than a Morocco or an Aragon. And so we come to the third suitor. And who is the third suitor? A young man with no money, a young man with no land, no title. Now we've had princes and lords and all these people who've come and had to put money down before they could join in the game of chance. This is a young man not only without anything worthwhile, but with considerable debts. But a young man, as Portia notes, a good-looking man, one with a very, very good, very close friend who procured him a loan just so that he could enter this game of boxes. One might justifiably suggest that he even entered the game on false pretenses. The money he seemed to have wasn't even his. So he entered the game cheating. But if he wins, all his problems and all his debts are resolved. So, when he examines the dreaded caskets, it's with a far more careful eye than those of his predecessors. And he is not going to be tempted by the obvious, nor by the quick promise of reward. He thinks in the way he should think, in the way all of them should think, because the clue is in the clue on the box. So let's hear what Bassanio says.
So may the outward shows be least themselves. The world is still deceived with ornament. In law, what please so tainted and corrupt, but being seasoned with a gracious voice obscures the show of evil. In religion, what damned error but some sober brow will bless it, and approve it with a text, hiding the grossness with fair ornament. There is no vice so simple but assumes some mark of virtue on his outward parts. How many cowards whose hearts are all as false as stairs of sand, wear yet upon their chins the beards of Hercules and frowning Mars, who inward searched have livers white as milk, and these assume but valor's excrement to render them redoubted. Look on beauty, and you shall see 'tis purchased by the weight, which therein works a miracle in nature, making them lightest that wear most of it. So are the crisped, snaky, golden locks, which make such wanton gambols with the wind, upon supposed fairness often known to be the dowry of a second head, the skull that bred them in the sepulchre. Thus ornament is but the guiled shore to a most dangerous sea, the beauteous scarf veiling an Indian beauty. In a word, the seeming truth which cunning times put on to entrap the wisest. Therefore, thou gaudy gold, hard food for Midas, I will none of thee. Nor none of thee, thou pale and common drudge tween man and man. But thou meager lead, which rather threatens than dost promise aught, Thy plainness moves me more than eloquence. And here choose I. Joy be the consequence.
Let's take a little look at what he says there. As I said, the clue is in the clue. And the clue says, who chooseth me must give and hazard all he has. Now, remember the deal at the beginning. They had to come up with money. He needed 3,000 ducats to enter the game. It's a bit like you have to have the ante to get into a really high-rolling game of poker. He needed to have that money there to even get to the table. And that's what he's betting. That money is on the table, 3,000 ducats borrowed by his friend on one huge gamble, possibly the biggest gamble of his life. Now, we know he's in debt. We know he owes money to Antonio. We know he's borrowed before. And from the way he thinks, one suspects he is a bit of a poker player. And he hasn't been successful in the past. This is a huge gamble. But he goes for that box because when he looks at the other, look at what he says about the world being deceived by ornament. And we are, and we've seen that being proved. Ornament, anything that you look at that seems to be worth something, hiding the grossness with fair ornament, the gold that might encase a tomb, the silver that encases cheap plate. There is no vice so simple but assumes some mark of virtue on its outward parts. In other words, no matter how corrupt something may be, it might look much better than it is. And he uses the idea of cowards, hearts as false as stairs of sand. I love that, stairs of sand. Anybody who's tried to walk up a big sand dune knows exactly what that means. Where yet upon their chins the beards of Hercules, whereas their guts are white as milk. I love this one. Look on beauty, and you shall see 'tis purchased by the weight, which therein works a miracle in nature, making them lightest that wear most of it. No matter what you look like, if you put enough makeup on, if you lard it on, you can actually look quite pretty. But underneath, you're still spotty and flabby. That's why I wear a beard. Anyway, there's also another tiny little, it's there, you got to watch for it. Thus ornament is but the guiled shore to the most dangerous sea, the beauteous scarf veiling an Indian beauty. If that isn't racist, I don't know what is. So all the way through this, he's saying what things appear to be are not what they are. That's what I'm betting on, that everything is deceptive, that looks good. Therefore, I have given, and I will wager, I will make a gamble. He decides, he chooses to gamble on his instincts rather than what he sees in front of him, because he is a gambler by nature, and he chooses the lead casket, the cheat box, and he wins. He wins because he saw through the game. He saw through the game, and the game is the game of, in a way, it's a game of life. It's a way of understanding that what we think we see is not necessarily what is there, and that what we think may not be worth anything might be the very hidden prize we are seeking. He gambled on the truth of the reality, if you like, of the world, and that the main prize very often is not standing there saying, hello, I'm the main prize. Sometimes you have to go searching for it. But the result is, he's the winner. He's won the lady and the house, Belmont, on her own private island, and the money. And she is seriously rich. She is far richer than Antonio or anybody we've met so far. This is serious wealth. This is the Woolworth heiress. This is so huge. He is now the richest man in the play, because by marrying her, he takes everything. it becomes his, including her. She actually says so. She says, I am now yours, your property. He's the boss. He is the man. Or is he? They declare love for one another. They plight their troth. They barely met. She saw him once at a party somewhere, and now he's turned up and she thinks, oh, he's good looking. And then she wanted him to delay choosing because she wanted to spend more time with him. But you would hardly describe them as long acquainted. They have had very little time together. But one thing they do notice about one another is that they're gorgeous. So they exchange rings, a very important point on the side plot much later on. But it's a side plot about honesty. Another important point. They swear loyalty to one another, that they will never betray one another. Then, through the wonderful device of theatre, they discover Antonia's problem. Messages come, word comes that Antonio is now in jail and that Shylock is seeking seeking repayment because Antonio has failed the date of repayment. Portia points out to Bassanio that he is now probably the richest man he's ever known, and that he has all the money he needs to pay the debt many times over. There's Bassanio going, oh God, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Portia is the one who says, calm down. Just be calm. We'll pay the debt. We have plenty of money. You have plenty of money. You're now my husband. They're betrothed, but in legal sense, that made it okay. But most importantly, on hearing of the deal and of Shylock's determination to extract the penalty, Portia is the one who takes control. She takes command of the situation. Bassanio, apart from jumping up and down and being very upset and swearing vengeance, Bassanio is useless. It is Portia who is the one who says, I'm going to deal with this. You see, she may have had to relinquish authority. She may have had to relinquish her wealth and her house and her servants and even her clothes to the ownership of this new husband, Bassanio. And she has done so publicly. But in actuality, she doesn't give it up. Shakespeare gives us a woman who is far cleverer, possibly the cleverest person in the play, far cleverer than her husband, far cleverer than even Shylock. This is a woman who now says, I'm not going to have this. If my husband's friend is in danger, I'm going to solve this, regardless of the cost. And she hatches a plan. Now, part of that plan, well, I'll explain what I mean by it after you've listened, but it involves a journey and a slight change of identity. Let's listen to what she says to Nerissa.
Come on, Nerissa. I have work in hand that you yet know not of. We'll see our husbands before they think of us, but in such a habit that they shall think we are accomplished with that we lack. I'll hold thee any wager that when we are both accoutred like young men, I'll prove the prettier of the two. And I'll wear my dagger with the braver grace, and speak between the change of man and boy with a reed voice, and turn two mincing steps into a manly stride, and speak a phrase like a fine bragging youth, and tell quaint lies about how honorable ladies sought my love, which I, denying, they fell sick and died. And 20 of these puny lies I'll tell, that men shall swear I have discontinued school about a 12-month. I have within my mind 1,000 raw tricks of these bragging jacks, which I will practice.
Which is rather fun, isn't it? I'm going to dress up and pretend to be a guy, which is fine. And it's a jolly speech on that level. And interestingly, because she knows she's a woman and she can't convince everybody that she has a basso profundo voice, she'll say that she's just graduated from school. When they say school, they don't mean it quite in the sense that we do, in that people graduated from school at a much younger age. And the school might have been university in that sense. But she is saying, I'm going to pretend to be a man, and so are you, Marissa. And then she has a lot of fun with the idea. She's amusing herself with the idea. A fine bragging youth and tell quaint lies, how honorable ladies sought my love, which I denying, they fell sick and died. This is sort of fairy tale stuff, fantasy stuff. This is straight out of girly magazines. But she's playing the game. She's enjoying the idea of the game she's going to play. And 20 of these puny lies I'll tell. Lies. Men will swear I've discontinued school about a 12-month. I have in mind 1,000 raw tricks of those bragging jacks which I will practice. The lies that men tell, the games that they play, I will practice. I'm going to tell a big lie. And so, they will take on the disguise of being men. At the very outset of her plan, this plan she has to save Antonio, to satisfy Bassanio, she's going to start with a big lie. She's already sent Bassanio on ahead with tons of money. At the court, Bassanio flings down so much money. Shylock won't take it because Shylock is now determined to have his bond. So she will enter that courtroom starting with a big lie. Now, as I say, I keep using this word lie, and there's a reason for that. Because at no point in any of the preceding plot, anything that has happened so far, from the very beginning, when Antonio Portia stole away and stole money and jewelry, including that engagement ring from his wife Leah. At no point in all the insults that Shylock has suffered from the Christians, at no point, and at no point in what follows, does Shylock ever tell a lie. And that's an important pivotal point. That at the beginning of the solution, as far as Portia sees it, to the problem of Shylock, she begins with a deception of a man who never deceived anyone, but always told the truth. So, that said, we're finishing slightly early today. Next week, we are going to see the outcome, which might actually finish slightly late. Next week, we are going to see what happens in that courtroom. What happens when Shylock goes to seek justice and Portia seeks something from Shylock called mercy. Will we see justice? Will we see mercy? Probably not, but this is Shakespeare and nothing is ever quite what you expect it to be. So anyway, thank you today. I want to say a quick word of thank you to my wonderful actors who read that. I want to thank Gayle Pazerski. I want to thank Lamar Cheston, Ken Bolden, and Ryan Kearney, who all read so well. Thank you so much for doing that. When they do this for me, they very often have to do it a couple of days ahead, and they're not quite sure what I'm going to say about them. But then again, it's a bit like being directed by me. You never know what I'm going to say. Anyway, I want to thank them. We must say thank you to the Theatre Authority for allowing us to use the actors, which we're delighted to do in this time of COVID. Any work we can create is always important. Thank you to the Allegheny Foundation, who sponsor us. And thank you to Liu for being out there. But do remember that even though we are sponsored on this, we still need all the help we can get. We are moving forward towards our 25th season. It's going to be very special. So please, please, please consider sending us a donation. no matter how small, as I always say, every single dollar, euro, or whatever your own currency is, every single dollar counts. And we are more than grateful. And I promise you, every dollar you send us, we use to present the best possible theater that we can. In the meantime, have a good week. Thank you. Oh, wait a minute. There's a question. Does Portia skew the balance in Bassanio's favor by giving him hints? Tell me where is fancy bread, the song. That's a very good question. And it's often posited that she does. I'm not sure. And the second line, tell me where is fancy bread, is in the heart or in the head. That could be a clue. She never sort of points at the lead casket and says, pick that one. But that notion, in the heart or in the head, is she saying, don't think with your heart, think with your head? Or as in more modern parlance, don't think with that particular part of your physiology that men usually think with, use your brains. Yes, I suppose the answer to that question could be, yes, it could be. And that's about as precise as I can get, because there is no absolutely direct clue, but it could be regarded as a hint, if that helps you. American theatre. Alan, for Bassanio's speech, wonder if Shakespeare was thinking of Indici's clothing, skeleton of his that tone, Middleton's. There's another interesting question. Yes, but I think it's a slightly obscure reference. In other words, the answer to my reason for saying yes, that's a possibility, is saying when you are writing anything, when you're directing anything, when you're acting anything, there are, thousands of images and thoughts in the back of the head that you may not even realize are there. There are influences on the imagination that come from our experience. Remember that fundamental proposition, we are the sum total of all our experience. Everything that we are is based on everything that we have done and seen and felt and experienced. In other words, apart from nature giving us a genetic code, nurture gives us a code of imagination. Everything that has ever happened to us is filtered, as I say, through the five senses. You see it, you hear it, you taste it, you touch it, you smell it. All of that is filtered through the imagination, and the images and the pictures we have, physics is actually now showing us. We may not all see the universe in exactly the same way. It can depend on how our own imaginations have been fed. It is in the brain, as Oscar Wilde said, and the brain alone, that the rose is red. But we don't know what red is in reality. We only know what we think it. So if all of those things are going in, and Shakespeare certainly was well read, those images might have been there. But whether he used it as a deliberate reference point, or whether it was simply the fact that his imagination was so full of images and ideas and thoughts and impressions. I remember, this might explain it. I was at a function in Turin, in Italy, a good few years ago now, and Harold Pinter was being given an award. It was the spring after he got his Nobel Prize. And we went over to do readings and talks and various other things for him from the Gate Theatre. And I joined on one thing with a well-known theatre critic, Michael Billington. And somebody asked the question, where does all of this come from? And I gave the answer, most people have a stepladder up into their imagination, whereas Pinter has a moving staircase. He can literally, or he could literally open his imagination and so much would flow out. He had a capacity to absorb. And I think Shakespeare must have had that kind of mind. But whatever he read, whatever he saw, whatever he thought, seemed to find purchase in his imagination. So the answer to that question, and any other like it, is possibly. Yes, head does rhyme with lead, but only because we speak modern English. It might have sounded different in Elizabethan, but it's a fair point. Yeah. And thank you, Ken, for your reading. So that's it. Unless there's anybody else with a question out there, we will call it a day. Never be afraid to send an email. You can send an email to marketing@pigtheatre.org, and we'll get back to you with a. There it is. Look, you can see it. I was right. Not always right, but I was right this time. Marketing@pigtheatre.org. And remember, it's .org, not .com. And in the meantime, we will see you all next week. Have a wonderful week. Join us next week for the fourth part, The Hideous Trial. And the week after that, we will be looking at another of those 7 basic plots. In the meantime, bye now.